Afternoon, or I should say good morning. I wanted to cut in here to give you an update on the latest from the National Hurricane Center when it comes to the 10 a.m. update from them. That is the major update, and we have two pieces of good news that we will be going over shortly here. I wanted to get a touch on radar here. Storm Team 10 here this morning, still showing some light to moderate rains along the coast. Chance of rain for the rest of the day going to be rather scattered. Notice how everything still ramps up here. I think we will get still some tropical rain bands here as we go into the morning hours of your Wednesday and eventually into the afternoon hours, but models and even the National Hurricane Center now trending towards the east. Temperatures right now 70s, the lower 80s. Dew points are much higher here across Acadiana, so you can definitely feel that tropical air mass. Temperatures will stay in the 70s and 80s. So here are our hurricane warnings currently across Acadiana and tropical storm warnings. The red shaded area, that is your hurricane warnings. That does include Lafayette Parish, St. Martin Parish, and down across Iberian St. Mary. It does extend out to Cameron Parish, but given everything that we're starting to see in the trends here, they're going to have to start, I think, canceling that hurricane warning across Cameron Parish, possibly Vermilion Parish. More than likely they'll keep that one in place. But notice that there is a general trend to push that hurricane warning over to Baton Rouge and down now across Terrebonne and Lafourche Parish. New Orleans now, I think they're in for a higher threat to see the possibility of a hurricane rather than, let's say, much of Acadia. There's the latest look at what is still Tropical Storm Francine. So Francine has behaved overall for the last 24 hours, really not getting its act together. There is a lot of convection, a lot of shower and thunderstorm activity off to the northeast, away from where the actual center of rotation is. So that again is keeping, I think, from the center from really fully defining itself. It's kind of a fight between the two to see what is actually happening. And there are hurricane hunters out there right now. And the latest run now, they have a 67 mile per hour wind in there. And that's about what they are putting this at, as a modest to strong tropical storm. Also, a lot of water vapor, a lot of dry air off to the north of this system. Kind of two competing systems here. You can see all the shower and thunderstorm activity there across really the northern Gulf and then back down where actually the center of rotation is. So here is the latest from Francine from the National Hurricane Center. Lifting off to the northeast. If you remember earlier they were forecasting a Category 2 storm. No longer expecting that, but getting close to it. There is going to be some uncertainty with how strong this system is able to get over the next 24 to 36 hours. With it going a little further east, there may be enough time that it's able to reach a weak Category 2 status. But look how much that forecast cone has shifted eastward, with the center now situated over St. Mary Parish. And to be honest with you, a lot of the models now are further east than that, really honing in on, let's say, Terrebonne or Lafourche Parish as possible landfall sometime tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening. Here's Future Track today showing those scattered showers and storms, and then the tropical rain bands start to move in tomorrow morning. I think there's still going to be some issues here across central and eastern Acadiana, depending on how far east this actually makes landfall. This model shows it more making landfall across St. Mary Parish. That will still give us some wind impacts here across central and southeastern Acadiana in the form of wind gusts anywhere in Lafayette from 50 to 60 miles per hour, but definitely a better forecast and a better outlook than what we were staring down yesterday. Closest to the center could still see, let's say, 70 to 80 to 90 mile per hour wind gusts. The HRRR model showing St. Mary Parish here as possible landfall. But again, as I stressed, some of those models are further east than that. So really from the west to the northwest, the further you are from Lafayette per se, the lower the impacts are going to be. Much lower rain totals, lower wind speeds, lower wind gusts, and everything else associated with the system here. And with the center now going east of us, we really don't have to worry about the possibility of any type of tornado. So the weather impacts are basically what I've kept from yesterday. A couple minor adjustments, but nothing major, which is what we want to see. And we may need to start kind of dialing these down just a little bit. Flash flooding threat still for Lafayette, points southwards down across Iberian southeastern Acadiana. So 4 to 8 inches of rainfall in those areas, 10 inches or more in isolated spots. 35 to 90 mile per hour winds. Right now, that's going to be right there near the eye, near the center of rotation. So that's going to be St. St. Mary Parish, possibly Iberia Parish pushing upwards of those 90-mile-per-hour wind gusts, and then coastal storm surge 4 to 8 feet. But again, that's looking a little bit better now with that more easterly track. Of course, we have News 10 at noon coming up in a couple hours. We'll get you the latest on that. Also, if you can join us on KLFY's Facebook page, you go to KLFY News 10. I'll be doing a live update on that as well, where you can ask any questions that you may have. But overall, 2 pieces of good news coming out of the National Hurricane Center forecast cone, and everything trending in our favor. I don't want to give you the go-ahead that everything's clear. We're still going to get some impacts from this, but we're sitting in a much better spot than what we were 24 hours ago. Again, I'm meteorologist Chris Cozart here in the Storm Team 10 Weather Center. All right, Acadiana, I see that our Facebook Live is up and running. We're working a little bit behind the scenes. I'm going to throw up my webcam so you'll be able to see me. Also, ask any questions that you may have as we're heading into your midday Tuesday on this September 10th. 2024, talking about what is still Tropical Storm Francine, which is good news there. That once again, this is Tropical Storm Francine and not Hurricane Francine. Those were some of the weather impacts. I hope you were watching this morning from KLFY News 10, and we'll be giving you updates over the next several hours. The next one, the big one, will be coming up at noon for News 10 at noon. But that's some of the weather impacts. I want to start over and kind of refresh everybody that's coming in for the Facebook forecast here and the Facebook Live on KLFY News 10 on what we have generally happening at the moment. So we definitely still have hurricane warnings posted across those areas of, let's say, all the way from Cameron Parish to down to Vermilion Parish. Those are still in place. I think the first thing they're probably going to do, if the forecast continues to go the way it is, they're going to have to cancel, I think, the Cameron Parish hurricane warning. They're more than likely going to, just as a conservative, keep the Vermilion Parish hurricane warning in place in those areas as well. Lafayette, it's going to be a little stretch to see if we're going to have any type of hurricane-like conditions. It's going to be a close call for Lafayette Parish. So again, that's why I'm kind of being a little bit more cautious with everything. I'm optimistic. I'm pleasantly optimistic that we're sitting in a much better spot than what we were yesterday, with all the model trends definitely going eastward. And this is kind of similar. You know, you look at the season, you look at the current season, and you look at what happened with Hurricane Beryl. That forecast was much further west for Texas, and it ended up mainly hitting Houston, so it really came east. And we're kind of seeing what's happening with that, with this system, where the models have just done a significant shiftward east here over the last 24 hours, really overnight and this morning. That significant shift has happened. And I think what's going on too is just how disorganized the system has remained. It hasn't gone through any type of rapid intensification. We are getting some swirl here now. a little bit more well-defined just southeast of Brownsville. Some convection now filling in across those areas. So we are getting some rain wrapping around here. There's more convection here. And I think what's happening is these two areas are this area is much larger and was actually robbing the center circulation, and so it's a very lopsided system right now. They're competing with each other, which is great. We want them to fight with each other as long as possible. I think the center circulation, this main feature here, will eventually win the battle here over the next 24 hours. And as we switch over to the enhanced satellite, it really amplifies the fact of how just disorganized and lopsided this system is. There is a good amount of wind shear coming across the Gulf Coast, also a good amount of dry air that we'll show you here in just a bit. The actual center of Francine's down here with a lot of convection up across now just offshore of Louisiana. So we are getting some of that tropical moisture funneling into the area. There are hurricane hunters out there right now flying around trying to find that center of rotation. Latest pass-through has 67-mile-per-hour winds there. Overall, still looking like it's not reached a Category 1 storm, which yesterday it was gaining some strength, and there was a little bit of a worry that this thing was getting its act together. But fortunately, it has really behaved itself, per se, over the last 24 hours. Water vapor loop, I like showing this because you can just see the amount of dry air with this system, and a lot of it's coming across Mexico and going to try to merge here, and we'll see how much is able to get sucked into the system. So there's a lot going on that's going to be against the system when it comes to what's going to happen over the next 24 to 36 hours before it makes landfall. It's going to try to strengthen its best. It's going to try to organize. It's going to have to fend off the dry air. There's wind shear here, and where it's been raining, not now with it raining even more, but where it's been raining over the last few weeks in this area, those coastal waters, those shelf waters are running below average. So there is some cooler waters here. And even the National Hurricane Center, I just noticed this with the latest forecast cone, they actually have the system weakening before landfall now. So whatever happens here in the next 24 hours, I think that's what we're going to see. How strong it can get in 24 hours is about as much as I can see it getting strong here. And the National Hurricane Center, I think, recognizes this as well. So they're showing a 90-mile-per-hour wind. They're backing off a little bit on the thought that this could reach Category 2 strength. So that's the first adjustment. The other big adjustment for the area of us here in Acadiana is how far eastward the actual model has shifted. If you've been watching my Facebook page, you've noticed that I've been talking about that eastward shift, and anybody that's watched around Thibodaux, Houma, New Orleans to be extra cautious about this, as they will be more under the threat for the possibility of a hurricane now impacting those same areas. There still is some uncertainty westward. I'm not overly concerned about that. The general trend has been eastward with all the models, and you can see the tropical models now really honing in on the southeastern Louisiana, somewhere making landfall in St. Mary, possibly over towards Terrebonne or Lafourche. Some models even go as far east as New Orleans. I think that's a pretty far stretch, but hey, that's been the trend. There hasn't been what we call this windshield wiper effect, where you get the west jog, the east jog, the west jog, and it kind of go back and forth. The last 24 hours, it's been consistently eastward. So future radar, this is the HRRR model, not necessarily a tropical model, but does pretty good in high resolution situations and short-term situations. Showing a good amount of tropical rains pushing in this afternoon. There could be some gusty winds in there. Coastal regions may need to watch out for the possibility of some, let's say, coastal flooding there. And then here comes the system. That's 6:30. It's showing that coming in a little bit quicker. It's still on the earlier model runs, because if it goes a little further east, it's going to be slower than this. But still, if you look at this, we're going to be on that western side of this system here. Even in Lafayette, some of these outer rain bands will wrap around the center. Strongest wind's going to be here in St. Mary Parish, over towards Terrebonne and Lafourche, those areas. But even around Iberia Parish, St. Mary Parish, St. Martin Parish, Vermilion Parish, and even upwards of Lafayette, we're going to be really close to this. Now, the further northwest you head, the further west you're away from this center, the better you're going to be. And this is going to move through pretty quickly. I think this may be a little quick to arrive. I think the National Hurricane Center has this coming in at around 7 o'clock now over St. Mary Parish. Tough call on exactly how quick it will get over to those areas, but we are looking at afternoon, possibly now early evening hours, and you can see everything moving off to the north to northeast. So here's the wind gust as this comes in. This is again the HRRR model. I may throw up a couple other different models just to see what they're thinking as well. Keeping it a relatively strong hurricane, category one, I should say, not an overtop major hurricane or anything like that, but definitely showing 70-mile-per-hour winds to 80-mile-per-hour winds across the Houma area. And you notice Lafayette still dealing with, as we get into Wednesday afternoon, 50 to almost 60-mile-per-hour winds here. The further west and the further northwest you are, Lake Charles, those areas looking pretty good too. DeRidder, Cameron, you're sitting really a lot better here. Alexandria, anywhere up across Ville Platte, you're going to be fine. Still looking at the possibility of 40 to 60 mile per hour wind gust up across St. Landry Parish. This still could cause some issues when it comes to, let's say, minor power outages. The higher threat's going to be on the eastern side of the system. So unfortunately, the same spots that hit that got impacted by Ida, and I think there probably are still trying to pick up Ida. So Houma, Thibodaux, those areas up towards New Orleans, they're in line now with possibly some of the strongest winds in the worst part of the storm as everything has shifted eastward. And because of that shift eastward, you can see the rainfall totals. I definitely like the way this looks as well. I think this will verify more when it comes to the rainfall chances and the rainfall totals. Much lower rainfall totals back to our west. As we get closer to Lafayette, we're going to pick up about 4 to 6 inches of rainfall, possibly some isolated higher amounts, and the further in down across southeastern Acadiana could pick up that 10 inches of rainfall that we talked about. So again, a medium threat. This is what we've been talking about since the beginning, since yesterday when I was putting up those initial impacts on what Francine could be bringing. The impacts we may need to start adjusting downward. I'm a little conservative right now on doing that. I don't want to jump the gun too quickly on that until we can really be happy with the models showing that easterly shift and keeping that easterly shift in place over southeastern Acadiana. So really, I think these impacts need to be taken from Lafayette down across Abbeville, go over towards New Iberia, and then down into southeastern Acadiana, Jeanerette, and those areas. As we see 4 to 8 inches of rainfall in those spots, 10 inches or higher, definitely a possibility. The wind threat's going to be close to that center of rotation, so really we're looking at 60 to 90 mile per hour winds there across Iberia and St. Mary Parish. A coastal storm surge, if it continues to shift even eastward from St. Mary Parish, if it goes over to Terrebonne, we may even dodge most of the storm surge. There will be some piling up here as we progress into the overnight hours because that storm's going to be approaching, so that's still going to push some of that water. We may notice some of that coming up in our coastal regions here in Iberia and St. Mary Parish over the next really 12 to 24 hours before the actual storm arrives. I did want to check on a couple different ones here when it comes to the graph model, seeing the latest on that. And now the graph model, I mean, you see how far away this one is. And now it's showing eastern Terrebonne Parish over towards Lafourche Parish. If this verifies for tomorrow evening, Acadiana is really going to be spared a lot of the issues. And now it brings the graph model brings that all the way with the eye going over pretty much Lake Pontchartrain in New Orleans. That's the latest from the graph. And the graph usually is pretty aggressive with wind speeds. It always tends to be a little bit east, but overall it's been a good indication on this easterly trend, and it's now showing Terrebonne Parish and the Houma area and the Thibodaux area as a possible landfall spot. That would spare more of St. Mary Parish as well, as that heads up towards the northeast there Wednesday evening. And this one, the graph model only shows, looking at Lafayette, a 30 to 40 mile per hour wind. That's the case for Intercoastal City. Franklin's top wind gust would be around 51. This would be our ideal situation if you really, I understand that, you know, from our standpoint, we're kind of in Acadiana. That's our bubble. That's what we want. We're trying to root for this thing to go east. Obviously, we don't want any of the impacts to happen anywhere, but if it's going to happen, we want it outside of Acadiana, and that's definitely the way the graph model is showing. That being said, also, let's see if I have the, kind of curious on some of the, let's see, Some of the rainfall totals have really backed off as well. Rightfully so, since most of the storm is going to be on the east side of us. The European still showing about 9 inches, but that's an old model. I was hoping we had a graph, that I had the graph accumulation here. I think this might be it. Yeah, so this is the graph model showing about 3 to 4 inches of rainfall, 3 to 5 inches in Lafayette. So that's sitting pretty good as well. And that's going to be the trend. The overall trend as it progresses further east, if it makes that landfall, which right now is still an if, still lessens those impacts the further east it heads. And definitely the graph is showing a significant eastward shift, which we saw earlier this season. If you're just watching, just tuning into KLFY's Facebook page for this. Again, this happened with Beryl earlier in the season. And there are certain characteristics with certain storms that you really have to take, and seasons are that way as well. So, you know, the models, maybe they were having a lot too much of a westerly bias in initial runs, and as these storms start to get their act together, they really pick up on that easterly shift. So the models have to try to learn themselves as well, and you have to learn what the models are showing you in a season, and with what we saw with Beryl could be almost playing out with what we're seeing with Francine, showing a more of an easterly, southeasterly Louisiana landfall as opposed to anywhere close to Acadiana. So we definitely are sitting in a much better spot. That being said, I want to just overview it, and then we'll cut off the Facebook Live, and then we'll get ready for the noon show that comes up in about an hour and a half. Once again, hurricane warnings are still in place, and those do extend across Lafayette Parish and St. Martin Parish. If the model trend continues with easterly, southeasterly Louisiana, they may start cutting those back just to be safe, but nonetheless, they'll keep them in place for now. And we have tropical storm warnings across those areas of Jeff Davis, Acadia, Allen, Evangeline, St. Landry. Still could see tropical storm force winds. That's upwards of 74 miles per hour. Remember, a tropical storm can go up to 74 there or 73 before it's a Category 1 at 74 miles per hour. Some scattered showers today. Down to our southwest, though, there is Francine competing with another area of shower and thunderstorm activity offshore Louisiana. You can see that spin right now, and there is some convection blowing up. So this circulation is starting to win a little bit of the battle here. Now, the hurricane hunters are out there right now. The latest wind speed that they just recorded here, 67 miles per hour. That's about what the National Hurricane Center has it at 65. Switching over to the water vapor loop, we have a lot of dry air ahead of this system. That's going to help us. So the next 24 hours has a chance to have some strengthening, some organization, but this dry air and wind shear across this area and cooler waters is really going to, I think, overall hurt the system, and the National Hurricane Center, I think, sees that as well. Starting a north-northeasterly movement now. I just noticed that. That's the latest from the National Hurricane Center. So there is an easterly component to this, almost a northeast component here as we go over the next 24 hours. Notice that the latest forecast cone does not show a Category 2 storm close to it, though, as it's still getting up to 90 miles per hour. And now that forecast cone has shifted eastward and showing the center over St. Mary Parish, but a lot of the models are even further east than that. Unfortunately, folks across those areas, Terrebonne, Lafourche, over towards Orleans Parish, I think they really need to be on the watch out for this one. Hopefully they didn't think that this was going to come up Acadiana and really spare them, because they look like they could be taking some of the worst of this storm. Again, some of the wind gusts, I think, still could reach in Lafayette 50 to 65 miles per hour, and then stronger towards our southeast for Iberia, St. Mary. I would say St. Martin Parish are going to be so close to this that I'm just, once again, a little weary of saying that we're all in the clear. So we are still right now anticipating some impacts, just not as significant of impacts as we expected when we were sitting here 24 hours ago. Definitely much lower chances for any type of wind impact and severe impacts here across, I would say, anywhere west, really west of Lafayette. So Acadia, Jeff Davis, and up towards Allen, Evangeline. We still have to be very careful with Vermilion Parish Parish. Could be some storm surge there. Remember, that water's still going to pile up into this area based on it coming in from the southwest. So we appreciate you watching. Everything is trending towards the better for us at the moment. Not in the clear, not out of the woods. I don't want everybody to lax just yet here with this system, but definitely trending in the correct direction for us here in Acadiana to lower those impacts, lower the significant impacts for the area. Again, thanks for watching here on KLFY's Facebook page, and from the Storm Team 10 Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Chris Cozart. We'll see you at noon on KLFY News 10.